The scent of fear clung to my skin like morning dew, unmistakable, primitive, impossible to wash away. I had learned to recognize its metallic tang in the air when others experienced it, but feeling it emanate from my own pores was different, more intimate, more terrifying. "The Alpha King wants to see you," he said. 7 words that shattered the careful invisibility I had cultivated for years. 7 words that sent ice through my veins as I stood frozen among the scattered herbs I'd been sorting in the pack's communal kitchen. 7 words delivered by Nathaniel, the Alpha's third in command. His face impassive, but his eyes flickering with something that might have been pity. The kitchen, usually filled with the warmth of baking bread, simmering stews, and chattering voices, fell silent. Dozens of eyes turned to stare at me. Ilara, the human girl who lived among wolves. The girl with pale blonde hair who everyone tolerated but no one truly accepted. The girl who had no place here, yet nowhere else to go. "Why?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. My fingers clutched the small silver pendant that hung around my neck. My mother's last gift before she died. "Always be brave, even when you're terrified," she had told me. The pendant had become my talisman, my silent confidant when the world grew too cold. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "It's not my place to question the Alpha King's commands, and it's certainly not yours." The kitchen remained unnaturally quiet. No one moved to help me, to defend me, to question why the most powerful werewolf in the Northern Territories would summon a lowly human kitchen worker. But I saw the speculation in their eyes, the relief that it wasn't them. "Now, Ilara," Nathaniel's voice softened slightly, "don't make this harder than it needs to be." I set down the basket of dried rosemary with trembling hands and wiped my palms on my simple gray dress. The dress that had been chosen precisely because it would help me blend into the background, become invisible among the vibrant, vital werewolves whose world I inhabited but could never fully join. Did I do something wrong?" I asked, hating how my voice cracked. A bitter laugh came from Mira, the head cook, who had never bothered to hide her disdain for me. "Oh, you've done something, all right. Humans always do." I flinched at her words, at the venom they contained. 3 years I had worked in this kitchen, always arriving first and leaving last, taking the tasks no one else wanted, sleeping in the smallest quarters, eating the plainest food. 3 years of existing in the shadows, grateful just to be allowed to live when so many humans had perished in the Great War. And now, summoned by the Alpha King himself, King Roman, the most feared wolf in the Northern Territories, perhaps in all the territories. A leader who had won his throne through blood and ruthlessness. A king who was said to have executed his own uncle for treachery without blinking an eye. What could he possibly want with me? Nathaniel gestured impatiently toward the door. The Alpha King doesn't like to be kept waiting. I swallowed hard and followed him out of the kitchen, acutely aware of the whispers that erupted behind us. The corridor stretched before me, longer than I remembered, its stone walls seeming to close in with each step. Guards fell into formation around us. 4 of them, massive and stone-faced, their ceremonial armor gleaming under the torchlight. Far more security than needed for one frightened human girl. "Nathaniel," I ventured, my voice small in the cavernous hallway. "Please, tell me what this is about. I've done nothing to draw attention to myself." He kept walking, his stride purposeful. "Perhaps that's the problem," he said enigmatically, not bothering to look back at me. We ascended the grand staircase that led to the upper levels of the pack house, areas I had never been permitted to enter. Each floor we passed grew more opulent, more intimidating. Tapestries depicting ancient wolf battles adorned walls inlaid with precious metals. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. The scent of power permeated everything. Old power, earned through centuries of dominance and victory. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a desperate plea. Don't notice me. Don't see me. Let me return to my safe insignificance. But it was too late. Whatever anonymity I had cultivated had already been stripped away with those 7 devastating words. We reached an ornate double door guarded by wolves whose very stillness spoke of lethal capability. They acknowledged Nathaniel with subtle nods, their eyes sweeping over me with cold assessment. One of them smirked, and I heard him inhale deeply, no doubt smelling the fear radiating from me. "A human in the throne room," he muttered to his companion. This should be interesting. The doors swung open, and I was nudged forward, not roughly, but with unmistakable command. The throne room stretched before me, vast and imposing, its high windows casting long rectangles of fading afternoon light across the polished marble floor. Werewolves of high rank lined the walls, adorned in finery that marked their status within the pack hierarchy. And there, at the end of the impossibly long walkway, sat the Alpha King. Even from a distance, there was no mistaking his presence. He occupied the ancient throne hewn from a single massive oak as if born to it, though everyone knew he had claimed it through conquest just 5 years ago. His shoulders were broad, his posture perfect, his face unreadable beneath a closely trimmed dark beard. He wore no crown. Alpha Kings never did. Their power came not from symbols, but from something more primal, more absolute. "Move," Nathaniel whispered, giving me a gentle push. My legs felt leaden as I began the long walk toward the throne. The guards flanked me, their footfalls synchronized, creating a rhythmic backdrop to my racing thoughts. Every eye in the room tracked my progress. I could feel their curiosity, their judgment, their speculation. What had I done to deserve this? Had someone accused me of theft? Of spying? Of some transgression I couldn't even imagine? I kept my eyes downcast, focusing on placing one foot in front of the other. The marble floor reflected my small figure, making me appear even more diminutive than I was. My simple gray dress, my pale blonde hair pulled back in a practical braid, my unadorned face, everything about me seemed designed for insignificance, for surviving by being overlooked. "Halt!" commanded a voice when we were still several paces from the throne. I froze, my eyes still fixed on the floor. "Look at me, human." The Alpha King's voice was not what I had expected. Not a roar, not a growl, but something smooth and controlled, like the surface of a deep lake that concealed unfathomable depths, dangerous in its very restraint. I raised my gaze slowly, terrified of what I might find, but more terrified of disobeying. Our eyes met, and the air seemed to solidify in my lungs. King Roman was younger than I had imagined, perhaps in his early 30s. His eyes were a startling amber, almost golden in the late afternoon light, wolf eyes, watchful and intelligent. His features were sculpted as if from granite, all sharp angles and uncompromising lines. He wore a simple black tunic, adorned only with a silver chain bearing the royal seal, a deliberate rejection of the ostentation his predecessor had favored. But what struck me most was the perfect stillness with which he observed me. No fidgeting, no unnecessary movement, just absolute focus, as if I were a puzzle he intended to solve. "Your name," he said. Not a question, but a demand. "Alara, Your Majesty." My voice emerged as barely more than a whisper. Louder. I swallowed. "Alara, Your Majesty. And how long have you lived among my wolves, Alara?" 3 years, Your Majesty." He tilted his head slightly, his gaze unwavering. 3 years. Working in the kitchens, sleeping in the servants' quarters, speaking only when spoken to, making yourself invisible. The way he said it made it sound like an accusation. "Yes, Your Majesty." What else could I say? It was the truth. And before that? The question struck like a physical blow. Before that. Before I had stumbled half dead to the borders of wolf territory, fleeing horrors I refused to name even in the privacy of my own thoughts. I traveled, Your Majesty, after the Great War. There was nowhere for someone like me to belong. A murmur rippled through the court. The Great War had decimated human civilization, leaving survivors scattered and vulnerable. Many had been absorbed into supernatural territories, as servants, as laborers, as blood donors for vampires, as amusements for fae, as prey. King Roman leaned forward slightly. "Someone like you," he repeated, his voice thoughtful. "And what exactly are you, Alara?" Confusion flooded me. "I'm human, Your Majesty." "Are you?" The question hung in the air, deceptively casual, yet weighted with implication. My heart stumbled in its rhythm. "Yes," I whispered, suddenly uncertain. What else could I be? He studied me for another long moment, then abruptly rose from his throne. A collective intake of breath swept through the room as he descended the 3 steps that elevated his position and approached me directly. Up close, he was even more intimidating. He towered over me, his presence seeming to fill all available space, compressing the air around us. I fought the instinct to step back, to run, knowing it would be both futile and dangerous. Never show fear to a predator. It was the first lesson any human learned upon entering wolf territory. Yet he could smell my fear anyway. All of them could. 3 deaths in the past month, he said, circling me slowly. 3 wolves found with their throats torn out. No scent trail, no witnesses, no enemies declaring responsibility. Ice flooded my veins. Murders? Was I being accused of murder? I don't understand, I stammered. What does this have to do with me? He stopped directly before me, so close I could feel the unnatural heat that radiated from his skin. A trait of his kind. This burning from within. The first death occurred in the kitchen storage area, he said. The second near the servants' quarters. The third in the herb garden. All places where you spend your time, Ilara. Horror washed over me in a sickening wave. You think The words caught in my throat. Your Majesty, I wouldn't. What you could or couldn't do remains to be seen. His voice was dangerously soft, but you were nearby each time. And yet, curiously, you saw nothing, heard nothing, know nothing. Because there was nothing to know. The words burst from me before I could stop them, louder and more desperate than I intended. A low growl rumbled through the chamber, not from the king, but from the assembled wolves, warning me of my insolence. King Roman silenced them with a barely perceptible gesture. His eyes never left mine, searching, probing, as if he could extract the truth through will alone. 3 years you've lived among us, he said. 3 years we've sheltered you, fed you, protected you. And in return, you've given us what, exactly? I opened my mouth, but no words came. What had I given them? Labor, yes. Obedience, certainly. But was that enough to justify my existence in their world? Take her to the holding cells, he commanded suddenly, turning away. We'll continue this discussion when she's had time to reconsider her loyalties. No! The cry tore from my throat. Please, Your Majesty, I've done nothing wrong. I know nothing about these murders, but he was already ascending the steps back to his throne, his broad back a wall between us. His decision made, hands grasped my arms, not cruelly, but with implacable strength. As the guards began to lead me away, I felt something shift inside me, a spark of something I had thought long extinguished. Indignation, anger, the faintest ember of defiance. I have been loyal, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I have been grateful. I have been invisible because that's what you all wanted, a human who knew her place, but I did not kill anyone. The Alpha King paused, one hand resting on the arm of his throne. Without turning, he spoke, his words carrying easily across the now silent chamber. We shall see what you are, Ilara, and what you are capable of tomorrow. As the guards dragged me away, I clutched my mother's pendant, feeling its familiar edges press into my palm. Always be brave, even when you're terrified. Tomorrow, it seemed, I would need all the courage I could find. The holding cell was not what I expected. No dank dungeon or iron bars, but a Spartan chamber with stone walls, a narrow bed, a small table with a pitcher of water, and a window too high and narrow to offer escape. A prison disguised as hospitality. Much like my entire existence among the wolves. Night had fallen, and moonlight spilled through the window in a silvery rectangle across the floor. I sat on the edge of the bed, still clutching my mother's pendant. Its familiar weight the only comfort in this unfamiliar space. 3 years of careful invisibility, undone in a single afternoon. 3 years of survival threatened by crimes I hadn't committed. The memory of the Alpha King's eyes haunted me. Those amber depths that seemed to see through the careful facade I'd constructed around myself. Are you? He had asked, when I claimed to be human. The question echoed in my mind, stirring uncertainties I'd buried long ago. Of course I was human. What else could I possibly be? A soft knock broke through my thoughts. The door opened to reveal a female wolf I recognized, Lydia, one of the king's advisors. Unlike most wolves who viewed humans with disdain at best, she had always treated me with a detached sort of kindness. She carried a tray with bread, cheese, and a steaming mug that filled the room with the scent of chamomile. "You should eat," she said, setting the tray on the table. I remained seated, watchful. Am I to be well fed before my execution? A flicker of something, surprise perhaps, crossed her face. Is that what you think is happening here? 3 murdered wolves, convenient human scapegoat. What else should I think? Lydia studied me, her head tilted slightly to one side. She was older than most of the wolves in Roman's court, silver threading through her auburn hair, fine lines at the corners of her eyes. Age that spoke of wisdom and survival in a world where both were rare commodities. If King Roman wanted you dead, Alara, you would already be dead. She gestured to the food. Eat. You'll need your strength for tomorrow. What happens tomorrow? I asked. Even as I reached for the bread, my body betraying my mind's suspicion with its hunger. Questions. She replied simply. Many questions. I've told the truth already. I know nothing about the murders, perhaps. She moved to the window, gazing out at the night sky. But you know other things, don't you? Things you've kept hidden. My hand froze midway to my mouth. What do you mean? 3 years you've lived among wolves, Alara. 3 years surrounded by creatures who can hear a heartbeat quicken with a lie, who can smell fear and secrets and sorrow. She turned back to me, her expression unreadable. Did you really think no one noticed? A chill spread through me. Noticed what? Your nightmares, for one. The entire servant's wing knows you wake screaming at least once a week, though you've become quite skilled at muffling the sound. Her eyes were unnervingly perceptive. And then there's the matter of your scent. I set the bread down, appetite vanishing. My scent? Humans have a particular smell. Not unpleasant, just distinctive. Your scent has always been unusual, muted somehow, as if something is masking what you truly are. My mouth went dry. I'm just a human who wants to survive. Perhaps, she said again, that single word carrying volumes of doubt. But survival requires adaptation, and you've adapted too well, haven't you? 3 years, and not a single wolf has threatened you, challenged you, or attempted to claim you. The implication hung in the air between us. Human women in wolf territories often faced unwanted attention, their lack of supernatural strength making them vulnerable targets. I had attributed my relative safety to my deliberate invisibility, to making myself as unremarkable as possible. I've been lucky, I whispered. Lydia's smile held no warmth. There is no such thing as luck in a wolf pack, Ilara. There is only strength and strategy. She moved toward the door. Rest now. Tomorrow will test both. The door closed behind her with a soft click, followed by the more ominous sound of a key turning in the lock. I stared at the food she had brought, suddenly suspicious. Was it drugged? Poisoned? But if they wanted me dead, as Lydia had pointed out, there were far more efficient methods. I forced myself to eat, mechanically chewing and swallowing without tasting. I needed strength, whatever tomorrow might bring. As I sipped the tea, memories surfaced unbidden, memories I had spent 3 years trying to submerge beneath the tedium of daily survival, the sound of screaming, the acrid smell of smoke, my mother's face, pale and determined in the firelight. Run, Ilara. Don't look back. Don't ever tell them what you are. I set the mug down with trembling hands. Don't ever tell them what you are. But what was I? Just human. Just a survivor. Just a girl with nowhere else to go. Wasn't I? Sleep came in fitful bursts, haunted by fragments of nightmares, familiar terrors twisted into new forms. In my dreams, I stood before the Alpha King's throne. But the throne room stretched endlessly, the king's face obscured in shadow. What are you? He demanded over and over, his voice growing louder until it became a roar that shook the very foundations of the pack house. I tried to answer, but my voice was gone. My throat closed around words I couldn't form. I woke with a gasp just as dawn was breaking, thin gray light filtering through the narrow window. My body ached from tension, my nightdress clinging to sweat-dampened skin. Before I could fully gather my thoughts, the door opened. 2 female guards entered, their expressions professional and detached. "You're to bathe and change," one of them said, gesturing to a door I hadn't noticed the night before. "Everything you need is inside." I wanted to ask questions. What was happening? Where I would be taken? What the Alpha King planned? But the guards' closed expressions suggested answers would not be forthcoming. Instead, I obeyed, moving to the small adjoining bathing chamber where I found a copper tub filled with steaming water, scented oils, and clean towels. The unexpected luxury was more unsettling than comforting. Why provide such care for a suspected murderer? Unless this was not about the murders at all. I bathed quickly, scrubbing away the sweat of fear and the lingering scent of the kitchen herbs that usually clung to my skin. When I returned to the main chamber wrapped in a towel, I found a dress laid out on the freshly made bed, not the plain gray servant's garb I was accustomed to, but something finer, simple still, but made of soft blue fabric that matched my eyes, with subtle embroidery at the cuffs and neckline. "Put it on," one of the guards instructed, neither hostile nor friendly. I dressed with fingers that fumbled at the unfamiliar fastenings. The dress fit perfectly, another unsettling detail. Who had taken my measurements? Who had selected a garment that complemented my coloring when I had spent 3 years ensuring no one looked at me closely enough to notice such things? One of the guards approached with a brush. "Your hair," she said. I sat stiffly as she removed my practical braid and brushed out my pale blonde hair until it fell in soft waves down my back. The gentle treatment felt alien after years of keeping myself deliberately plain, deliberately forgettable. "Why are you doing this?" I finally asked. The guard paused, brush mid-stroke. "The Alpha King's orders, but why would he care how I look?" She resumed brushing, her movements methodical. "It's not my place to question the Alpha King's commands." The echo of Nathaniel's words from yesterday sent a shiver through me. No one questioned the Alpha King, not his warriors, not his advisors, certainly not a human girl accused of murder. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing, to find some kernel of strength within the fear. Always be brave, even when you're terrified. My mother's words came back to me, carried on the weight of the silver pendant that still hung around my neck, the one personal item they had allowed me to keep. My fingers found it automatically, tracing its familiar contours. A crescent moon with a small star nestled in its curve, a simple design that had always brought me comfort. When the guards finally led me from the room, I walked with my head high, though my heart raced with apprehension. We moved through corridors I had never seen, climbing higher within the pack house, away from the public areas, and deeper into the private domains of the pack's elite. The opulence increased with each turn. Tapestries gave way to original paintings, stone floors to rich carpets, iron sconces to crystal fixtures. Finally, we stopped before a set of double doors carved with an intricate forest scene. Wolves running beneath a full moon, the craftsmanship so fine that the animals seemed almost to move in the shifting light. One guard knocked, and a deep voice commanded us to enter. The room beyond was unexpected, not a formal audience chamber, but something more intimate. A study, perhaps, with walls lined with books, comfortable seating arranged around a hearth where a fire crackled despite the warmth of the spring morning. Tall windows overlooking the mountains that cradled the pack's territory. And there, standing with his back to us, gazing out one of those windows, was the Alpha King. "Leave us," he said without turning, and the guards withdrew immediately, closing the doors behind them with a soft thud that felt somehow final. For several long moments, he remained at the window, and I remained just inside the doorway, the silence stretching between us, taut as a bowstring. I studied him in the diffuse morning light. The broad shoulders beneath a simple white shirt, the dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the hands clasped behind his back. Powerful even in repose. When he finally turned, his amber eyes swept over me, taking in the blue dress, the loose hair, the silver pendant at my throat. Something flickered across his face, too quick to name, gone before I could interpret it. "Do you know why wolves are successful predators, Alara?" he asked, his voice deceptively conversational. The unexpected question caught me off guard. Because they're strong? Partially. He moved toward a sideboard where a carafe of water and 2 glasses waited. But there are stronger creatures, bears, mountain lions. He poured water into both glasses. No, wolves succeed because they observe. They learn patterns. They understand weakness and strength, both in their prey and in themselves. He offered me a glass. They are patient. I stepped forward to accept the water, careful to avoid touching his fingers. Is that why I'm here? Because you've been observing me for 3 years? A hint of a smile touched his lips. You assume much importance. You summoned me before your entire court, accused me of murder, imprisoned me, and now, I gestured at my altered appearance. This. I think I'm entitled to assume something is happening that concerns me directly. He raised an eyebrow, and I immediately regretted my boldness. But instead of anger, something like approval flashed in his eyes. So the mouse has teeth after all, he murmured. He gestured to a chair. Sit. I perched on the edge of the indicated seat, back straight, knees pressed together, the glass of water clutched in both hands. He took the chair opposite mine, his posture relaxed yet still emanating authority. The night you arrived at our borders, he said without preamble. You were half dead from exposure, malnourished, your clothes torn, your feet bleeding. You begged for sanctuary, offering to work in exchange for protection. Do you remember what you said? I swallowed. I said I would do anything that was asked of me, as long as I could stay within the pack's territory. Anything, he repeated. A dangerous promise for a lone human girl to make to a wolf pack. I had nothing left to lose, I whispered. His eyes darkened. Everyone has something to lose, Ilara. Even those who believe themselves already stripped bare. He rose abruptly and crossed to a desk where a folder lay open. 3 years ago, I granted you sanctuary because my instincts told me you were more than you appeared. He lifted a paper from the folder. Since then, I've had you watched. Cold dread pooled in my stomach. Watched? Not constantly, but regularly. Reports made on your activities, your habits, your anomalies. He looked up from the paper. You never leave the pack house grounds. You avoid conflict to an extraordinary degree. You flinch at loud noises. You sleep with a knife beneath your pillow. You speak to no one of your past. His eyes narrowed slightly. And you age uncommonly slowly for a human. The accusation hung in the air between us. I tried to swallow, but my throat had gone dry. I don't understand what you're implying, I said, though a terrible suspicion was forming. I think you do. He set the paper down. 3 wolves dead, Ilara. 3 high-ranking members of my court, all killed in locations where you've been seen. All with nearly identical wounds. Wounds that could have been made by a blade similar to the one you keep hidden beneath your mattress. I need that knife for protection, I protested. Any human living among wolves would be terrified, he cut in. Would show fear daily, hourly, would be desperate to leave, to find other humans. Would age visibly over 3 years of constant stress. He took a step toward me. But not you. You've adapted too well, almost as if you belong here. My heart hammered against my ribs. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would be a start. He closed the distance between us in 2 long strides. What are you, Ilara? What are you hiding? Nothing, I insisted, even as my mother's voice echoed in my mind. Don't ever tell them what you are. You're lying. He spoke without heat, a simple observation. I can hear your heartbeat. I can smell your fear, not the fear of false accusation, but the fear of discovery. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. 3 wolves dead, and I believe you know who killed them. I believe you know why. I don't, I whispered, but even to my own ears the denial sounded hollow. His eyes locked with mine, searching, probing. Then prove your innocence. Submit to the blood trial. Horror washed through me. The blood trial. An ancient werewolf ritual where the accused's blood was mixed with that of a royal wolf. The mixture would reveal truth or falsehood, innocence or guilt. But it would also reveal, no, I breathed. I can't? he pressed. Or won't. What would the blood trial reveal about you, Alara? What secrets does your blood carry? I stood abruptly, nearly spilling the forgotten water in my hands. I didn't kill anyone. I swear it on my mother's grave. Then you have nothing to fear from the trial. His voice was implacable. Please, I said, desperation making me reckless. There must be another way to prove my innocence. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Perhaps there is, he said finally. But it would require your complete cooperation, your complete honesty. Anything, I said before I could stop myself, anything except the blood trial. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his stern features into something unexpectedly appealing. You should be more careful with that word, Alara. Anything is a dangerous promise. He returned to the desk and closed the folder. You will remain within my personal quarters for the duration of this investigation. You will go nowhere without an escort. You will answer every question I ask with complete truthfulness. He fixed me with a penetrating gaze. And you will help me find the real killer. But how can I help? I know nothing about— You know more than you admit, he interrupted. Even to yourself, perhaps. He moved toward the door. Rest today. Consider what I've said. Tomorrow we begin in earnest. He paused, hand on the doorknob. One more thing, Alara. Whatever you are hiding, and you are hiding something, I will discover it. I am patient, but I am not endless in my patience. Remember that. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone in the opulent room, clutching a glass of water I had not drunk, wearing a dress I had not chosen, facing a future that seemed to be unraveling with every passing hour. I sank back into the chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. 3 years of careful anonymity shattered. 3 years of secrets threatened. 3 murdered wolves, and an alpha king who believed I held the key to solving their deaths. My fingers found my mother's pendant again, its familiar weight both comfort and burden. Don't ever tell them what you are, but what if I had no choice? Block 3. That night, I dreamed of fire again, of smoke filling my lungs and screams echoing through the night, of my mother's face, illuminated by flames as she pressed the silver pendant into my palm. Run, Alara. Don't look back. Don't ever tell them what you are. I woke gasping, tangled in sheets finer than any I had slept on in years. For a disorienting moment, I didn't know where I was. The soft bed, the elegant furnishings, the pale morning light filtering through gauzy curtains, all unfamiliar. Then memory returned in a sickening rush. The Alpha King's private quarters, 3 dead wolves, suspicion and secrets, and the looming threat of the blood trial. I sat up, pushing sweat-dampened hair from my face. The room I'd been given was small but luxurious, adjoining the study where the Alpha King had questioned me. A beautiful cage, but a cage nonetheless. A soft knock at the door startled me. Yes? I called, pulling the covers higher. The door opened to reveal a young female wolf, probably no more than 16 or 17. She carried a tray with tea and bread, her eyes downcast. The Alpha King requests your presence in 1 hour, she said, setting the tray on a small table near the window. I'm to help you prepare. What's your name? I asked as she moved to open the curtains fully. She hesitated, as if surprised by the question. Maya, miss. I'm Alara, and I don't need— The Alpha King was very specific about how you're to be dressed, she interrupted, a hint of nervousness in her voice. He said you're to attend a council meeting. A council meeting. My stomach tightened with anxiety. The highest-ranking wolves in the pack would be there, the ones most likely to see through any deception, to notice any slip I might make, the ones most likely to demand the blood trial. I forced myself to eat while Maya laid out another new dress, this one a deeper blue, more formal than yesterday's, with silver embroidery at the hem and sleeves. When I finished eating, she helped me dress, then brushed and arranged my hair, weaving small silver beads into the pale blonde strands. You have beautiful hair, she commented softly, like moonlight. The innocent observation sent a chill through me. Moonlight. If only she knew. The Alpha King said to leave this on, Maya added, gently touching the silver pendant at my throat. He said it seems important to you. I nodded wordlessly, my throat too tight for speech. Why was he doing this? Dressing me like a prized possession, keeping me close, watching me with those penetrating amber eyes. What game was he playing? When Maya finished her work, she stepped back to assess the result. "You look lovely," she said, a note of genuine admiration in her voice. Then, more hesitantly, "Is it true what they're saying? That you know who killed those wolves?" "No," I said firmly. "I know nothing about the murders." She studied my face, her young eyes more perceptive than I would have liked. "But you know something, don't you? Something important." Before I could respond, another knock came at the door, harder this time. Maya jumped slightly, then moved to answer it. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, his expression as impassive as ever. "The Alpha King is ready for her," he said to Maya, who nodded and quickly departed. He turned his attention to me, his eyes taking in the formal dress, the arranged hair, the silver pendant. "You clean up well for a kitchen maid," he observed dryly. "I'm not," I began, then stopped myself. I wasn't what? A kitchen maid? A murderer? A simple human girl? None of those were entirely true anymore, if they ever had been. Nathaniel's mouth quirked slightly, as if he'd heard my unspoken thoughts. "Come. The council doesn't like to be kept waiting." He led me through corridors even more opulent than those I'd seen yesterday, deeper into the heart of the pack house where only the most elite wolves were permitted. Tapestries gave way to original paintings, stone floors to rich carpets that muffled our footsteps. The air itself seemed different here, heavier with power, with history, with the weight of decisions that affected thousands. We stopped before a set of double doors carved with the pack's emblem, a wolf howling beneath a crescent moon. Nathaniel gave me a sidelong glance. "Whatever game you and the Alpha King are playing," he said quietly, "be careful. There are those on the council who would see you executed simply for being human, murder accusations aside." Before I could ask what he meant by game, he pushed the doors open, and we entered the council chamber. It was a circular room dominated by a round table of dark wood, polished to a mirror shine. Around it sat 12 wolves, 6 male, 6 female, each emanating the unmistakable aura of power that came with high rank. At the head of the table, in a chair slightly larger than the others, sat the Alpha King. All eyes turned to me as I entered. Some gazes were merely curious, others openly hostile. One older female with steel-gray hair watched me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Ah, Ilara," the Alpha King said, his deep voice filling the chamber. "Join us." Nathaniel guided me to an empty chair, directly to the king's right, a position of honor that caused a ripple of murmurs among the council members. I sat stiffly, acutely aware of my vulnerability in this room full of predators. "For those who haven't been introduced," the king continued, "this is Ilara. She has lived among our pack for 3 years, working primarily in the kitchens. She is helping with our investigation into the recent murders." Helping? The word came from a broad-shouldered male with a scarred face, or being investigated. Both, perhaps. The king replied smoothly. "Ilara was in proximity to all 3 murder sites, yet she herself is not a wolf, which raises interesting questions about how a human might overpower 3 of our strongest warriors." "Unless she's not human," said the steel-haired woman, her voice sharp as a blade. The blood trial would settle that question immediately. I tensed, fingers automatically seeking my pendant. The Alpha King noticed the gesture, his amber eyes narrowing slightly. "The blood trial remains an option," he said, "but I prefer to exhaust other avenues of investigation first." He turned to a thin wolf with spectacles perched on his nose. "Declan, what have you learned about the murder weapon?" Declan cleared his throat. "Based on the wounds, we're looking for a blade. Silver, most likely, given how the flesh refused to heal even after death. Approximately 6 inches long, extremely sharp, wielded with considerable force." "Silver," murmured the king, his gaze flicking to my pendant. "Interesting. I don't have a silver blade," I said, unable to keep silent under the weight of implication. "The knife I keep is steel, for protection, nothing more." "So you say," the scarred wolf growled. "Peace, Victor," the king commanded. "We're here to investigate, not accuse." He turned to another council member. "Helena, what of the timing?" The woman addressed, younger than most at the table, with calculating eyes, consulted a ledger before her. All 3 murders occurred during the full moon, when most wolves were either transformed or distracted by the hunt. The victims were found in isolated areas of the pack house, killed quickly and efficiently. No signs of struggle, no defensive wounds, suggesting they knew their killer, the king concluded, or at least didn't perceive them as a threat. His words hung in the air, their implication clear. A human in a wolf pack was never perceived as a threat, especially not a quiet, obedient human who had spent years making herself invisible. What were the victims doing in those locations? I asked suddenly, drawing surprised looks from around the table. The kitchen storage, the servants' wing, the herb garden. None of those are places high-ranking wolves typically visit. The Alpha King's mouth curved in what might have been approval. An excellent question. Helena? Helena frowned at her ledger. Counselor Damon was found in the kitchen storage area. According to the staff, he had gone to inspect a shipment of wine that had arrived that day. Wine? I repeated, my mind racing. The kitchen received a shipment of silverthorn wine the day of the first murder. It's extremely rare. The head cook mentioned it was reserved exclusively for the Alpha and Council. A flicker of interest crossed the king's face. And the second victim? Counselor Reed, Helena continued, was found near the servants' quarters. He had gone to speak with the head of housekeeping about preparations for the upcoming Alliance gathering. The Alliance gathering, I murmured, memories stirring. The servants have been preparing guest quarters for weeks, cleaning, replacing linens, arranging what? The king pressed. Silver, I said, the realization dawning. Silver candlesticks, silver serving pieces, silver ceremonial items, all being polished and inventoried for the gathering. A tense silence fell over the chamber. Silver was precious to wolves, not just for its value, but for its ceremonial significance in pack rituals. It was also one of the few materials that could truly harm them. And the third victim? The king asked quietly. Counselor Livia, Helena said, her voice softening slightly. Found in the herb garden at dawn, the morning after the full moon. She often walked there, I said, remembering the elegant female wolf who had sometimes nodded to me as I worked among the plants. She said the scent of herbs helped clear her mind after a transformation. What specific herbs were you working with the day she died? The king asked. I closed my eyes, thinking back. Moonflower, wolfsbane, silver sage. I stopped. The pattern suddenly, horribly clear. Silver. All 3 murders connected to silver. The Alpha King's eyes locked with mine, a silent communication passing between us. Not just silver, he said softly. Silver connected to the royal house. Royal wine, royal ceremonial items, royal herbs. The implication settled over the council like a dark cloud. These weren't random killings. They were targeted attacks against the pack's leadership, perhaps against the Alpha King himself. This changes things, the steel-haired woman said, her hostility toward me noticeably diminished. We're not looking for a rogue killer. We're looking for a traitor. Or an outside enemy, added Declan. The southern packs have been restless since King Roman took the throne. They might have planted an assassin. If the human is innocent, Victor said, still glowering at me. Let her submit to the blood trial. Let her prove her humanity and her loyalty. My breath caught. The blood trial would reveal my innocence of murder. Yes. But it would expose other secrets, truths I had buried so deeply I sometimes forgot they existed. The Alpha King rose slowly, his presence commanding immediate silence. The blood trial is a sacred ritual, not to be used lightly. For now, Ilara remains under my protection and my supervision. His voice carried the unmistakable weight of absolute authority. She will continue to assist with the investigation. The rest of you will increase security, particularly around anything connected to silver or royal ceremonial items. He gestured to me. Come, Ilara. We have matters to discuss privately. I stood on legs that felt unsteady, aware of the council's eyes following me as Nathaniel escorted us from the chamber. Once the doors closed behind us, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. You did well, the Alpha King said, surprising me. I didn't do anything, I replied. You observed. You made connections others missed. He studied me thoughtfully. You've been watching us for 3 years, haven't you? Learning our patterns, our weaknesses. Just as we've been watching you." There was no accusation in his voice, merely a statement of fact. Still, it unnerved me how accurately he had assessed my survival strategy. "What happens now?" I asked as we walked down a corridor I didn't recognize. "Now," he said, "we set a trap for our killer." He stopped before another door, this one unadorned except for a simple carving of a wolf at its center. "These are my private chambers," he explained, pushing the door open. "Few are permitted to enter. You'll be safer here than anywhere else in the pack house." The room beyond was unexpectedly austere for an alpha king, spacious but simply furnished, with a large bed, a sitting area before a fireplace, and windows overlooking the mountains. Books filled shelves along one wall, their spines worn with use. No ostentatious displays of wealth or power, just the quiet confidence of a leader who had no need to prove his dominance. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, unable to contain the question any longer. "Why dress me like this? Seat me at your right hand. Bring me into your private chambers." "What do you want from me?" He closed the door and leaned against it, his amber eyes never leaving mine. "I think you know, Alara." "I don't," I insisted, though a fluttering sensation in my stomach suggested otherwise. 3 years, he said, his voice low. 3 years I've watched you move through my pack house like a ghost, present but not seen, heard but not listened to. 3 years of reports about the human girl who never complained, never caused trouble, never connected with anyone. He pushed away from the door, moving toward me with the fluid grace of a predator. "But I saw you. I saw how you observed everything, understood everyone, adapted to survive in a world that should have crushed you." He stopped just before me, close enough that I could feel the unnatural heat radiating from his skin. "I want to know what you are, Alara. What you're hiding. Why you came to us. But most of all," he reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek in a touch so light I might have imagined it. "I want to know why, of all the places you could have run to, you chose a wolf pack." His touch lingered on my skin like a whisper of flame. I should have stepped back, maintained distance, preserved the careful walls I'd built around myself. Instead, I remained frozen, caught in the amber intensity of his gaze. "I didn't choose a wolf pack," I said finally, my voice barely audible even in the quiet room. "I was running from something worse." A shadow crossed his face. "The Great War?" "After." I turned away, unable to bear the weight of his scrutiny. When the dust settled and the survivors emerged, things changed. Humans became commodities. He was silent for a moment. "Vampires," he said. Not a question, but a conclusion. I nodded, memories rising unbidden. The raid on our settlement, the screams in the night, my mother shoving me through a hidden cellar door as heavy footsteps approached our home. "They attacked our village," I continued, my gaze fixed on the mountains visible through the window. "They called it a harvest. My mother hid me, but they took her, took everyone." My fingers found the pendant at my throat. "I ran for days before I reached your borders. And you chose to beg sanctuary from wolves rather than risk capture by vampires." His voice held a note of understanding. "A reasonable choice, but not the whole truth, is it?" I turned back to face him. "What more do you want from me?" "Everything," he said simply. The word hung in the air between us, laden with implications I wasn't ready to face. I moved to the fireplace, seeking distance, seeking warmth against the chill that had settled in my core at the mention of vampires. "The murders," I said, deliberately changing the subject. "You said we're setting a trap for the killer. How?" He allowed the deflection, though his eyes told me our conversation was merely postponed, not forgotten. "The pattern is clear now. The killer targets wolves connected to silver and royal ceremonies." He moved to join me by the fire. "The next full moon is in 3 days. The alliance gathering begins the day after." "You're going to use the gathering as bait," I realized. "All that silver, all those high-ranking wolves in one place. A temptation our killer won't be able to resist," he confirmed. "But first, we need to narrow down our suspects." "You still think it might be me?" I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. His expression softened slightly. "No. You've helped identify a pattern that exonerates you. But your connection to these events remains significant. 3 locations you frequent. 3 times you were nearby but saw nothing. So I'm still a suspect. You're a mystery, he corrected, and I've always been drawn to mysteries. Something in his tone made me look up sharply. There was a warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there before. A heat that had nothing to do with interrogation and everything to do with the diminishing space between us. King Roman, I began. Just Roman, he said quietly. When we're alone. The intimacy of the request startled me. I can't. You're the Alpha King. And you're the only person in my territory who looks me in the eye without fear or agenda. His mouth quirked in a half smile. It's refreshing. I'm afraid of you, I protested weakly. No. He stepped closer. You're afraid of what I might discover about you. Not of me. He was right, I realized with a jolt of surprise. Somewhere between being dragged before his throne and sitting at his right hand in the council meeting, my fear of him personally had evaporated. I feared exposure, feared the blood trial, feared the truth I had buried, but not the man standing before me. Roman, I conceded, the name feeling strange on my tongue. His smile widened, transforming his stern features into something almost boyish. Better. He moved to a side table where a decanter and glasses waited. Wine? It's barely midday, I pointed out. A small indulgence. He poured 2 glasses of ruby liquid. One of the few privileges of leadership, I accepted the offered glass cautiously. Speaking of leadership, won't the council think it strange that you've closeted yourself with your main murder suspect? Let them think what they will. He raised his glass in a subtle toast. They believe I'm interrogating you. In a way, I am. I sipped the wine. Rich, complex, warming. And what do you want to know? Everything, he repeated. But let's start with the pendant. My free hand flew to the silver crescent at my throat. It was my mother's. A crescent moon with a star, he observed. An unusual choice for a human woman living in a world where supernatural creatures are known by their connection to the moon. I looked away. It was a family heirloom. He didn't push further, but I could feel his assessment, his gathering of clues. Tell me about your nightmares. The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. How do you know about them? The servants' quarters have thin walls, and wolves have excellent hearing. He moved to sit in one of the chairs flanking the fireplace, gesturing for me to take the other. You cry out in your sleep, names sometimes. Please for someone to run, to hide. I sat stiffly, cradling the wine glass. They're just dreams. Are they? Or memories? Both, I wanted to say. Memories twisted by guilt and fear into nightmares that haunted me even in my waking hours. The night the vampires came, I said instead, I saw things no one should see. Heard things. I swallowed hard. Is it any wonder I have nightmares? He studied me over the rim of his glass. And the names you call out? Lyra? Alaric? Ice flooded my veins. Those names. Names I had buried so deeply I'd almost forgotten them myself. Names from before. From another life. Friends. From my village. They didn't survive. It wasn't entirely a lie. They hadn't survived as the people they had been. None of us had. Roman's gaze didn't waver. I think you're telling me partial truths, Alara. Enough to satisfy my questions without revealing what you're truly hiding. Isn't that what everyone does? I countered. Reveal only what's necessary? Keep the rest protected? Most people, yes. He set his glass aside. But we're not most people, are we? The question hung in the air, dangerous in its simplicity. We're not most people. Not most humans. Not most wolves. Something else. Something between. Something both more and less than either. A knock at the door saved me from having to answer. Roman frowned at the interruption, but called permission to enter. Nathaniel appeared, his expression grave. Forgive the intrusion, Your Majesty. But there's been another attack. Roman was on his feet immediately, all traces of warmth vanishing beneath the mantle of Alpha King. Who? Helena, From the council. She was inspecting the ceremonial chamber for the Alliance gathering. Someone struck her from behind. "Is she dead?" I asked, my heart racing. Nathaniel glanced at me, surprised by my interruption. "No, injured, but alive. She fought back." "Did she see her attacker?" Roman demanded. "No, but—" Nathaniel hesitated. "She caught a scent. Not wolf. Not entirely human, either. Something in between." Roman's eyes snapped to me, sharp with renewed suspicion. "Where was the attack?" "The ceremonial chamber in the West Wing. The silver crown was stolen, the one traditionally worn by the Alpha Queen during Alliance rituals." A heavy silence fell. The silver crown, a powerful symbol of the Pack's lineage and future. Its theft was not just a crime, but a statement, a challenge to Roman's reign and legitimacy. "Take me to her," Roman ordered. He turned to me. "You'll come too." "Is that wise?" Nathaniel asked. "If the killer is targeting those connected to royal symbols, then Alara is safer with me than anywhere else," Roman finished. "And I want her to hear Helena's account firsthand." The walk to the infirmary was tense, guards flanking us on all sides. Word of the attack had spread quickly, and wolves stopped to bow as we passed, their eyes following me with renewed suspicion. I had been seated at the Alpha King's right hand in council that morning. Hours later, another council member had been attacked. The timing would seem suspicious to anyone. Helena lay on a bed in a private room, a bandage wrapped around her head, her face pale but her eyes alert. She struggled to sit up when we entered, but Roman gestured for her to remain lying down. "Tell me what happened," he said, without preamble. "I was checking the ceremonial items as you ordered," she began, her voice strained. "Making sure everything was accounted for, properly secured. I felt a presence. Before I could turn, something struck me here." She touched the bandage. I managed to twist around, to lash out. I caught fabric, I think, tore it. And there was a scent. "Not wolf, not human," Roman prompted. She nodded slowly. "Something else. Something I've never encountered before." Her eyes drifted to me, but similar to her somehow. Not the same, but related. I felt the weight of Roman's gaze, heavy with renewed doubt, with questions I couldn't answer without destroying everything. "The crown," Helena continued. "They took only the crown, left the other silver pieces, even though some are more valuable." "It's symbolic," I said quietly. "The attacks aren't about wealth or even killing. They're about challenging authority." Roman's head turned sharply toward me. "Explain." "The first 3 victims were all council members who supported your ascension to the throne," I said, pieces falling into place as I spoke. "The silver items connected to royal ceremonies. And now the Queen's crown." I met his eyes directly. "Someone's challenging your right to rule. Challenging your legitimacy." Helena's eyes widened. "The Southern Packs. They never accepted a Northern wolf as High Alpha." "But they've made no open moves against us," Nathaniel objected. "Open moves would mean war," I pointed out. "This way they undermine from within, create fear, suspicion, instability." Roman was watching me with an intensity that seemed to see through skin and bone to the secrets beneath. And how would a simple kitchen maid understand pack politics so thoroughly? I swallowed. "I listen. I observe. I've had 3 years to learn how wolves think." He held my gaze a moment longer, then turned back to Helena. "Rest. Heal. Tell no one what we've discussed." He glanced at Nathaniel. "Double the guards on all entrances. Check everyone coming and going. Wolves, humans, everyone." "And the Alliance gathering?" Nathaniel asked. "Proceeds as planned, but quietly spread word that the Queen's crown will be used in the main ceremony." Roman's mouth set in a grim line. "When the killer comes for it, we'll be waiting." As we left the infirmary, Roman's hand settled at the small of my back. A gesture that seemed both protective and possessive. It drew curious glances from passing wolves, whispers that followed in our wake. "They're talking," I murmured. "Let them," he replied, unconcerned. "It serves our purpose." "What purpose?" He guided me around a corner, into a smaller corridor away from prying eyes. To draw out the killer, he said quietly. They've been watching you as I have, using you as their cover. Now they'll see you growing closer to me, gaining influence, becoming... He stopped abruptly. Becoming what? I pressed. His amber eyes gleamed in the dim light of the corridor. A threat to their plans, understanding dawned. You're using me as bait. Not just bait, he corrected, his voice dropping to a near whisper. An ally, if you're willing. I should have been angry, should have objected to being used as a pawn in wolf politics. Instead, I felt a strange exhilaration. After 3 years of invisibility, of careful nothingness, I was being seen, being valued, being trusted, even if that trust was built on secrets and half-truths. I'm willing, I said, the words carrying more weight than I intended. His hand moved from my back to my arm, a gentle grip just above my elbow. Good, he murmured, because I think we both know the killer will come for you next. And when they do, his fingers tightened slightly. I'll be waiting. The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Roman kept me close, a strategy both for my protection and to provoke our unknown enemy. We moved together through the pack house, his hand often at the small of my back, his attention conspicuously focused on me during meals and meetings. To the pack, it appeared their alpha king had developed a sudden, inexplicable fascination with a human girl, a provocation to wolves who already questioned his judgment. To me, it felt like walking a knife's edge. Every shared glance, every brush of his fingers against mine sent conflicting signals through my body, warning and wanting tangled together in a knot I couldn't unravel. I told myself it was pretense, strategy, nothing more. But in quiet moments, when his eyes held mine a heartbeat too long, I wondered. You're distracted, Roman observed on the evening of the second day. We sat in his private study, reviewing security plans for the Alliance gathering. Maps and diagrams covered the table between us, marking guard positions and escape routes. I'm tired, I admitted. And... I hesitated, then pushed forward. Confused by all this. He leaned back in his chair, amber eyes studying me. By the murder investigation? By you, I said simply. By why you're really keeping me so close. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Am I not being obvious enough? Heat flooded my cheeks. You're the Alpha King. I'm a human kitchen maid. There's nothing obvious about any of this. Isn't there? He rose and moved around the table, perching on its edge near me. From the moment you arrived at our borders, half dead and defiant, you've been a puzzle I couldn't solve. A human girl with the courage to look wolves in the eye. A survivor who chose the most dangerous sanctuary available rather than risk what waited beyond our borders. He reached out, his finger tracing the outline of my pendant without touching it, a woman with secrets in her eyes and a silver crescent at her throat. I fought the urge to back away, to break the strange tension building between us. So I'm an interesting diversion from royal duties? No. The word was soft, but absolute. You're much more than that, Alara. I think you've always known it. Before I could respond, a knock interrupted us. Nathaniel entered, his expression carefully neutral as he took in our proximity. Forgive the intrusion, Your Majesty, he said, but the advance party from the southern packs has arrived early. Their alpha is requesting an audience. Roman straightened, his face sliding seamlessly into the impassive mask of leadership. Very well. I'll receive him in the throne room. He glanced at me. Alara will accompany me. Nathaniel's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. I'll inform the guards. After he left, Roman turned back to me. The Southern Alpha will have brought his own guards, his own spies. If our killer is connected to the Southern packs as we suspect, this is our chance to observe potential conspirators. What should I do? I asked, suddenly uncertain of my role in this dangerous game. Stand at my right hand, he said, moving toward a cabinet where formal attire waited. Watch. Listen. Use that remarkable perception of yours to notice what others miss. And if they ask who I am, why a human stands beside the Alpha King? A slow, deliberate smile spread across his face. Let them wonder. Half an hour later, I stood in the throne room beside Roman as the Southern delegation was announced. My heart hammered in my chest, though I kept my expression composed. I wore yet another new dress. This one silver gray with blue accents that matched my eyes, more regal than anything I could have imagined wearing 3 days ago. The Southern Alpha entered with an entourage of 6 wolves, all male, all radiating the controlled aggression of warriors in enemy territory. Their leader, Alpha Dominic, was older than Roman by perhaps 15 years, his dark hair streaked with silver, his face lined with experience and calculation. His eyes swept the throne room, assessing guards and exits before settling on Roman. Then his gaze shifted to me, surprise flickering briefly across his features before being replaced by shrewd assessment. "Alpha King Roman," he said, offering the formal bow of one pack leader to another. "I thank you for your hospitality. We did not expect to arrive before the gathering, but our journey was swifter than anticipated." "Alpha Dominic," Roman acknowledged. "The Northern Territories welcome you and your wolves." His tone was cordial but cool, the tension between the two packs an unspoken current in the air. Dominic's eyes slid to me again. "I see you've made interesting changes since I was last here." Roman's hand came to rest lightly at the small of my back, a gesture of possession that sent a shiver up my spine. Change is the nature of leadership, is it not? Those who cannot adapt do not survive long as Alpha. The implied criticism was subtle but clear. Dominic had been Alpha of the Southern Packs for over 20 years, maintaining power through rigid adherence to tradition, rather than innovation. "Indeed," Dominic replied, his smile not reaching his eyes, though some traditions exist for good reason. His gaze lingered on me, curious and calculating. "I was not aware you had taken a human consort." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Consort. Not mate, a wolf term reserved for their own kind, but consort, implying something temporary, lesser. Before Roman could respond, I spoke. "I am not his consort," I said, my voice clear in the hushed throne room. "I am his advisor on human affairs." Dominic's eyebrows rose. "A human advisor? How progressive of you, Roman." Roman's thumb traced a small circle against my back, a silent signal of approval. The world changed after the Great War. Those who ignore the perspectives of other species do so at their peril. Perhaps, Dominic conceded, though his tone suggested disagreement. I look forward to discussing such philosophies during the gathering. His gaze hardened slightly, along with more pressing matters, the recent murders within your pack, for instance. A subtle shift ran through Roman's posture, barely perceptible, but I felt it in the tension of his body beside mine. "News travels quickly." "As does concern," Dominic countered. 3 council members dead, a 4th attacked. Rumors of silver weapons and stolen ceremonial items. He spread his hands in a gesture of false concern. "Some might question whether the Northern Territories remain stable under your leadership." The threat beneath his words was clear. The alliance gathering would bring alphas from all territories together. A rare opportunity for a vote of no confidence, for challenge, for shifting power. "Your concern is noted," Roman said, his voice deceptively mild, but unnecessary. "The situation is well in hand." His fingers pressed against my back, drawing me a half-step closer to his side. "In fact, we've made significant progress in identifying the culprit." Something flickered across Dominic's face. Discomfort? Concern? It was gone too quickly to interpret. "I'm relieved to hear it. The safety of all alphas at the gathering must be assured." "Of course," Roman agreed. "Now you must be weary from your journey. Nathaniel will show you to your quarters. We've prepared the East Wing for your delegation." Dominic bowed again, the gesture precise to the exact degree required by protocol. "No more, no less. Until tomorrow, then." As he straightened, his eyes met mine one last time, searching, assessing. I held his gaze steadily, revealing nothing. After the Southern wolves had been escorted out, Roman remained standing beside the throne, his expression thoughtful. "You noticed it," he said, not a question but a confirmation. "His reaction when you mentioned progress in the investigation," I replied quietly. "He was surprised, maybe concerned." "Yes." Roman's voice was grim, and his early arrival, Convenient for someone who might want to observe our security arrangements before the gathering. You think he's behind the murders? Roman shook his head slowly. Not directly. Dominic is too cautious, too aware of consequences, but he might have sanctioned them, might be sheltering the killer among his wolves. He turned to me. What did you make of his reaction to you? Confusion. Calculation. I hesitated. And something else. Recognition, almost. Roman's eyes sharpened. Recognition? Had you encountered him before? No, I said quickly. Not him specifically. But the way he looked at me, it was as if I reminded him of someone. Roman was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant, thoughtful. The full moon is tomorrow night, he said finally. The formal alliance gathering begins the following morning. If our killer follows their pattern, they'll strike during the moon, when most wolves are distracted by the change. I'm not safe, I realized aloud. If they've been watching, they know I'm helping you, that I'm a threat to their plans. No, Roman agreed, his voice softening. You're not safe. He reached up, his fingers brushing a strand of pale blonde hair from my face. But I have no intention of letting you out of my sight. The intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. This was no longer merely strategy, no longer simply protection. There was something deeper growing between us, something dangerous and compelling that neither of us had named. And when the full moon rises, I asked. When you change? A shadow crossed his face. That complicates things. Of course it did. As Alpha King, Roman's transformation was both literal and symbolic, a display of power meant to inspire his pack, to remind them why he led. He would run with his wolves, hunt with them, strengthen the bonds of pack through shared ritual, leaving me alone, vulnerable. Unless, he said slowly, his gaze dropping to the silver pendant at my throat. You were to join us. My blood turned to ice. What? Not as you are now, he clarified, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. But as what you truly are, Alara. What you've been hiding all along. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. He knew, or suspected strongly enough that it amounted to the same thing. 3 years of careful deception unraveled by a week of intense scrutiny. I don't know what you mean, I whispered, the denial automatic, instinctive. Roman stepped closer, so near that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Don't you? His hand moved to cup my face, gentle but insistent. 3 years you've lived among wolves without aging as a human should. 3 years of nightmares about people with names from the old bloodlines. 3 years wearing a silver crescent moon, the ancient symbol of those who walk between worlds. His thumb traced along my cheekbone, his voice dropping even lower. You're not human, Alara. Not entirely. You're something far rarer, far more precious. His eyes, burning amber in the torchlight, held mine. You're half wolf, half human. A hybrid. The rarest bloodline of all. The truth hung in the air between us. The secret I had guarded with my life. The reality I had denied even to myself. My mother's voice echoed in memory. Don't ever tell them what you are. But he had seen through me, this Alpha King with eyes like flame, had recognized what I had spent a lifetime hiding. Tomorrow night, he continued, when the moon rises, you could choose to stop hiding, to stand with us, with me, as what you truly are. His forehead pressed against mine, breath warm against my lips. You could finally be free, Alara. Free. The word shimmered with promise and terror in equal measure. Freedom to be what I was, to stop living in shadows and fear. But freedom also meant vulnerability, exposure to those who had hunted my kind to near extinction during the Great War. Humans who feared our dual nature. Pure-blooded wolves who considered us abominations. Vampires who coveted our immunity to silver and daylight. I can't, I whispered, even as everything within me ached to say yes. Roman's thumb traced the outline of my lower lip. You can, he murmured. And when you do, we'll catch our killer. Together. Together. Another dangerous promise in a world where I had survived by being alone. Invisible. Forgotten. But as his lips brushed mine, a touch so light it might have been imagined. I realized invisibility was no longer an option. The choice before me was stark: embrace what I was and stand beside him, or run again, forever hunted, forever hiding.